So I want to cover the Lelit control center, the more advanced parameters in a bit more detail. And for this, I will not only have my crib sheet available, because I need to remember what parameters are coming up. So you'd switch the machine off, and to get into the advanced settings, hold the plus button in, feel it click, hold the minus button in, switch it on. If you don't, it will actually reset your settings and wait until you see the version number and KPC flash up. And this will tell you that you're into the advanced menu. You shouldn't need to go into this menu, okay? But if you want to tweak, if you want to set certain things, you can. And one of the things you might want to set is some of the bloom phase functions. The first parameter you see here is the PID parameters, KP coffee, right? The proportional parameter for coffee. Now you go through it by hitting the minus button, you scroll through the values, and the plus button takes you into changing values, right? But what we're going to do, we're going to go back round to the beginning. So that's the proportional for coffee. You shouldn't need to change this. It's set at 0.2. This is the integral, which I set at 0.07. And this is the derivative, which I found 10 to be a good value for this machine. Then this is the band for the coffee boiler to operate. And this is 30 degrees. Then you get steam, which is 2. For the proportional, there's no integral on the steam boiler, there's no derivative on the steam boiler, you don't need it. And then the band on the steam boiler, the band over which the PID works, is as small as possible. It's 1 degree, so that beyond 1 degree variance it just turns the heating element full on, which is exactly what you want for a steam boiler. Works like an on-off switch in effect. The EC is the offset, and this is the temperature within the brew boiler, and then you deduct 10 degrees from it, and that's the temperature you show as the actual brew temperature. So if your brew temperature says 93, EC, an offset of 10 degrees means the brew boiler is actually at 103, and it does a calculation to deduct 10 degrees and show you what it predicts the brew temperature is going to be. And this is common on all dual boiler machines. And you can change this if you want. I wouldn't, because that's the correct value. And wherever you are, that's not really going to change. ES is the offset for the steam boiler. Now, obviously, you would absolutely never use an offset on the steam boiler. You want to know that the temperature you see is exactly what's in the steam boiler. So that will always be set to 0. Then FO1 is the illumination. Leave that as it is at 1. TR1 is real temp or set temp. If you press the plus to go into programming, you can set it to 0, and that'll show you. If you set 93, it'll only ever show you 93 from the brew boiler, even though the temperature might be fluctuating slightly. If you set it to TR1, it'll show you the real temperature, which is what I believe you always would want to see. Total is not a function used on the Elizabeth. This would be for service menu settings on a Bianca or something. Moving through, EVS is electrovalve steam. 1 means the electrovalve is on, and while that valve is on, it will do steam pre-infusion, and below 115 degrees it will default to bloom pre-infusion. Or if the steam boiler is off, whatever temperature it is, it will do bloom pre-infusion. If you set this to off, you'll disable that electrovalve, and the steam boiler will play no part in pre-infusion, and all the pre-infusion will always be a bloom phase. But I'm going to leave that on, because you can, in effect, turn that electrovalve on and off your pre-infusion by actually just dynamically switching the steam boiler on and off just before you do the shot. Now, this is the steam bloom phase, yeah, for button 1, and that's 3 seconds. And the reason it's 3 seconds is you don't want too much water coming out, because that water goes into the brew boiler and from the steam boiler once the electrovalve opens. So if you run that pump for too short a time, yeah, what will happen is, say it's a second, the pump will run for a second, then stop, and then the steam boiler will apply pressure and actually fill up the rest of the headspace in here for the next 2 or 3 seconds with water, which will pump an awful lot of superheated water into the brew boiler, which you don't want. So the idea of having this pump run for 3 seconds is it fills up all the headspace, the gap between the coffee and the top of the portafilter and shower screen and any little spaces in between. It fills that with water, so when the pump stops, the steam boiler just applies pressure, constant pressure, and puts very little superheated water in the brew boiler and not enough to destabilise it. So that value is quite important. If it's too short, you're likely to run into the problem of overheating the brew boiler. If it's too long, then you're perhaps beginning the shot, you're getting too far through the shot. 3 seconds, the idea is to fill up all the headspace and then the pump to go off and then the electrovalve open, so the steam boiler just applies a gentle push to the coffee to start sweating the stuff through. The next value is BLS2, same thing for button 2. Okay, it's exactly the same thing, the steam pre-infusion. So if I'm using steam pre-infusion, it'll run the pump for 3 seconds. Now, you can, so if I press the plus, I can go down to nothing, which is obviously nonsense, and I can go right up to 10. But for a standard portafilter, a value of 3, maybe 4, depending on the size of the portafilter, is a good one. Next we move to the next value, and this is bloom phase, but for the pump, for pre-infusion without the steam boiler on. Now, without the steam boiler on, I like to set up my bloom phase to fill the headspace and run a little bit longer. This one's not a great example because I'm going to go to pump 2. I like actually to get a bit of push through the coffee. I like to run the pump for 6 seconds and then for the pump to stop for the rest of the pre-infusion time. And you'll see the pressure on this gauge gradually drop away. Some drips just come from the spout. And that's how I like to run my bloom phase. So I run the pump for a bit longer and I program that to button 2. Now if I want a steam pre-infusion, I use button 1 with the steam boiler on. If I want a bloom phase, I'll use button 2, and if the steam boiler's on, I'll press and hold that button to turn it off and do the shot. If it's not on, I'll just do the shot. But that's how I like to set up my bloom phase there. Next, you've got the PRG, and this is that flush, where you press 2 buttons at once, and it flushes water through the group. That's for 6 seconds, and you can program that flush to be longer. I can't remember how long you can get. No, 6 seconds is the maximum. So my apologies. So yeah, that's a 6-second flush, and I use it for cleaning the group. I think it was originally done so that people could have timed flushes. I think this was the idea, because a lot of this programming gets shared amongst various machines. So you could have a timed flush, maybe use it for back flushing. I find it very handy because when I'm doing a cleaning flush, I can press those 2 and I've got both hands free and I don't have to fiddle about to turn anything off. I can be brushing away at the group and get a set amount of water. And it just works well. I'll do it again so you can see what I mean. So I'll turn it off, I'll turn it back on, and we're back up to normal with all our parameters saved. So yeah, that double button, press it, and I'm free to gently brush around the group. There we go. And then use whatever water to clean inside the gasket groove. And that's nice because it just gives me the correct amount of water for washing the group out. You might use it for, I suppose, warming a cup, although I'd use the hot water button. So that's the machine. We've turned it off. It's obviously cooled down. It'll start to warm up. The rest of your functions are within the control center here. So when I talked about those initial pump runs, that's the initial portion of pre-infusion. So this is 14 seconds in total, but if the pump run is 6 seconds, the other 8 seconds will be the bloom phase, where the pump is off. So if I made that longer, if I made that 20 seconds, the pump would run for 6 seconds, and then for 14 seconds, it would be off while it did its bloom phase. Now I would find that too long, so I'm going to put that back to 14 seconds.